So the government, I talked about this yesterday. The government, Leo basically said it yesterday, and I basically said it yesterday in my video, that the government will not let RT go under. You think they would say let the ship sink, especially when the ship is about 70% full of water and it's sinking very fast, Like RT is literally, but again, at the end of the day, the only people that have to blame is themselves. Because let's be fair, RT is just basically the wing of the government. Basically, they're one and the same. There's very little distinction between the two of them. As you know, Simon Coveney, his brother is in OT, so one of the heads in OT. But again, they've given them 56 million extra. Who knows why they're giving them 56? Do you think they would say, well, it's not worth spending 56 million. We could spend it on something useful. We could do something useful for a community in Ireland, a different, upgrading roads, anything really, but, bring it to OT. That it's basically shown time and time again that it's gone past its function. Back in the day, it might have been good. Back in the day, back when it started, it might have been a revolution, we think, because obviously it was the only thing. But nowadays, in the modern age, there's very, very little need for radio television sharing, unfortunately. And especially now, what years ago maybe they would question authority and stuff, question politicians. Now, it's just all scripted, and it's just whatever the government press office or the Garda press office says, you don't dare question another thing past whatever the Garda press office or whatever situation is, whatever the press office or whatever the press secretary for on Taoiseach or on Taoiseach or whatever says, you cannot question it. You cannot ask another question. And unless it's down on the piece of paper before the interview or something like that to ask the politician, you can't ask it during the interview. Like OT has really understayed its welcome, let's put it that way. Uh, and just constantly pushing narratives that basically had no association. Like take for example Donald Trump. Every day of the week they were crying and crying about it, and people were literally dying on the streets of Ireland, and they wouldn't bother. Basically, they worry about things outside the country than they do about the citizens here, and they cover basically something that's has very little to do with Ireland, but they won't cover what's happening here because it looks bad in the government. And they pick and choose. And again, this is the same with every media. You can't pick and choose. What happens, what happens. You have to cover it regardless. You can't just pick your agenda, whatever suits your agenda, you just cover. And then whatever doesn't suit your agenda, you kind of claim to be, you say they're far right and then just refuse to cover it. Again, that's happening the majority of the time too in the media nowadays. That they just say it's far right propaganda. We won't cover them. We won't have these people have a say. Everybody deserves to say, regardless if you're left or right and stuff like that, you're entitled to your opinion. But again, OT is just, it's a different level. North Korea would blush, to be told. And China, Xi Jinping would be absolutely, I don't know, would he be appalled or delighted? Because let's be fair, Xi Jinping has a good Chinese Communist Party behind him. And obviously OT will not question the Communist Party of China too. They're a great bunch of lads, as they would say. We won't say no. They won't call out that, but yeah, and OT's, again, the Irish taxpayer and things are not to blame. I said it before, it should be a voluntary thing. Now they're probably waiting to see, they'll probably put up the TV license now to try and save OT. But as I say, it should be like Netflix. You subscribe to it. If you want to watch it, you can subscribe for 20 euro a month, whatever the case is. If 10 euro a month, right, it adds up to maybe 150, 180, right, 200 maybe euro a year. And you will probably, I straight away, if somebody said that to me, you can go fuck yourself. Excuse my language, but, in the most unparliamentary language, that's literally what I would say if somebody said you have to pay 200 euro and not a month but a year to watch OT. I'd be like, be paid to be lectured. I had enough of that in school. Being lectured without being lectured by the national broadcast on behalf of the government, lecturing you, saying what you should be thinking and what you should not question, and how dare you question anything that Leo says and Micheál says. You cannot question democracy. Democracy is all powerful. I think they're mixing themselves up with fascism and particularly communism too. They're mixing themselves up very quickly. But again, in the eyes of OT and things like communism, Stalin and things like Lenin were basically, everybody was riding unicorns and everything was laddie-daddy. And the gulags were just a fun entertainment place. That's basically an OT's narrative. But yeah, I don't know where that all came from, but you know yourself. That's the way the mainstream media kind of think nowadays. that I don't know. Well, to be totally honest, it's hard to know what OT takes. But you see with this with Vice News too, George Soros, basically just kept Vice News going, and that's what's the same with OT now at the moment. It's barely going to be going. It's just the amount of money they need to get by. Basically, they still need probably another billion to probably get by because they're in extreme debt. They have a studio in Donnybrook in one of the richest parts of the country. Well, it's probably multi-millions a week to have the place there. And then obviously, yeah, wages amount of money, Ryan Tubley and stuff like that, and the presenters are on, Joe Duffy and stuff like that. For the little they do, to be done, to sit in a studio. And the worst thing about it is, the people who are working real jobs, people that are working, only Joe working and OT, a caretaker and stuff like that, they're probably getting paid fuck all. They're probably not even getting paid at all. And that's the worst part of it. The people that actually working hard, the caretakers, the people who look after the gardens or whatever around OT and stuff like that, the receptionists, they're probably getting fuck all. And the people who are arsing around, pretending to give a shit, are getting a huge amount of money. But it's always the way, unfortunately. But again, this is kind of a bit of a wet. But we all kind of seen it coming that the government would bail them out. It'd be the same. Probably what happens soon. OT come with they'll be looking for 20 trillion euro, right? And we have to bail them out the same as the banks. We have to bail out the banks, of course. When that happened before. But if OT came along and said we're in debt of 25 billion euro, we're going to bankrupt the country to bail them out. Let's put it that way. Because, the government can't lose their mouthpiece. If they lose their mouthpiece, they lose a lot. Because, God forbid an independent media or independent people start asking questions without OT basically propping up the government's narrative every day of the week. It won't end well for them, let's put it that way. So they know that. Thank you.